Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, there are still some people in the meeting room.
Yeah.
We don't need to share our video, right?
No need.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think that should be everyone. Okay, so hello everyone, welcome to our workshop. Unfortunately, Emil couldn't make it today, so I'll take over to do a short opening for this workshop. First of all, I want to thank Kaspersky for co-organizing this workshop with us. Thank you very much. Today we have Ms. No Shin, a senior security researcher with Kaspersky's Global Research and Analysis team, sharing more about threat hunting with YARA as our instructor. So I hope you guys will attend all 3 workshops happening tomorrow and Thursday, as a lot of work had been put into this, and most importantly, have fun. So I'll now pass it on to Ms. No Shin to continue on with the workshop.
Thank you for the introduction. Thanks everyone for joining. Can someone confirm if you can hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Can hear again.
Okay, that's great. Thank you also for the poll. I would like to know how people responded and who has had experience with YARA and so on as well. If it's okay to share, guys.
Yeah, maybe I go ahead. So in my environment, I don't really get to write a lot of YARA rules, but we bring them programmatically on board into our environment, and then we run it on a schedule to detect malicious files using YARA. Yeah, so my goal really to here is to understand how we can use YARA better. And maybe there's some new insights that I can get from this workshop. Yeah.
Sounds great. Anyone else wants to share? So basically, I want these 3 sessions to be really interactive. I don't want to be the only one that talks. So please feel free to share if you have had experience with YARA, if you don't know anything about YARA and you're only interested to learn. And yeah. Okay, so let me first share a link with you to download some tools and the files, the samples that we are going to use today. There is no malware inside the collection, so we are not going to work on any actual malware today. So yeah, it's safe to download on your host machine, and we are basically going to install YARA on our main machines. If it's a Windows, if it's a Linux machine, it doesn't matter. You can run YARA on it and scan files with it. But if you don't feel comfortable with that setting, you can also use a VM. It's totally up to you. There's no special requirement for the platform that we are going to use. That's why I wanted it to be more general. And we use YARA, only YARA, and some tools to look at the strings inside the files to find some interesting strings to use in YARA rules. And then we write rules and run them on a small collection of files that I will share with you soon.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
Since this meeting is recorded, will the recording be shared with us also?
It's okay with me.
Just asking because I don't know whether it's going to be shared also. Kawi?
I guess the organizers will share it with you later.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I shared a link, a Google Drive link in the chat window. Please go ahead and download the files, the zip file, and extract it. We will see later how to install the tools and how to use them. The only thing that's required now is to download and have the files extracted ready on your systems. Meanwhile, I'll share my screen to share some introduction about YARA. Okay, so yeah, let's start. It's good to hear that some of you have used YARA in a way in your work environment or in the past. I'm sure it will still be interesting for you. The exercises that we are going to do in these 3 sessions, and yeah, feel free to let me know if you all want something more advanced. I can add something else for next sessions. Let's have the first session as more like introduction and basic rule descriptions and basic rule tips, and see what we want to do for tomorrow. A little bit about myself. I've been with Kaspersky for I guess almost 6 years, 5 years and a half, and in total about 10, 12 years in cybersecurity. I do reverse engineering, threat intelligence. I mostly spend my time on investigating targeted attacks, with the focus on Asia Pacific and what's happening in this region. I'm also interested and worked in IoT security for some time. And I do deliver workshops and trainings from time to time. So talking about YARA, introduction to YARA. This is from the author of YARA, Mr. Victor M. Alvarez. He's a software engineer at VirusTotal. And he basically describes YARA as the pattern matching Swiss knife for malware researchers and everyone else. YARA is a tool aimed at, but not limited to, helping malware researchers to identify and classify malware samples. With YARA, you can create descriptions of malware families, which are basically the rules, or whatever you want to describe, based on textual or binary patterns. Each description, also known as rule, consists of a set of strings and a Boolean expression which determines its logic. We will have a look at examples of YARA later. There are 2 links here, YARA documentation and the YARA GitHub. I will share the links in chat with you these are only for your reference. We are not going to use them now. Oh, I see a question in the chat. How is this different from MicroAttack? So basically, YARA is a tool that helps you to find patterns inside a file, which can be a binary or a text file or a script file. It doesn't matter what the format is. You look for strings or patterns inside the file with the help of YARA. And it also has different modules that's been developed by different people, modules to basically parse and extract information from, for example, portable executable files, the executable files for Windows operating system. Also, there are modules that help in other ways, like we have like in YARA there is a math module that calculates helps to calculate hash, calculate entropy from data from strings and so on. So basically signatures, yes, it basically works as a signature to find patterns in a file, but it can be more sophisticated than just pattern matching and finding strings in a file based on the conditions um, the um, and the way that you can look for files, for patterns and strings in a file, like a regular expression pattern. You can look for hexadecimal values. Different wildcards are introduced in YARA. Also, the conditions can help a lot. Looking at the metadata of the files, file size, compilation timestamp of the file, and so on. So it can be really helpful when it's used uh, um, in a professional way. So this is a very simple YARA rule in case you have never seen a YARA rule. Basically, a rule starts with rule and the name of the rule, and then there are three sections in a rule. The first section, which is actually optional, but it can be very helpful, is the meta section. In meta section, you can have different fields to show who is the author of the rule, what's the description, and basically what this rule does, what sort of files it is looking for. You can have version number, even a timestamp, or some references like a URL or malware hashes and different things in the meta section. There's also a string section, which is also optional. It can be there, it can be removed from the rule, but most of the times it's actually required to find what we are looking for. With the strings, each string starts with a $sign, a name for the string, then the string itself. There are also different options that you can use for strings, which we will see later. And last but not least, there's the condition, which is the actual logic of the rule. In the condition, you have a Boolean expression like this one, as you see, which basically means that we want the string A to be in the file, also a string B to be in the file, and we don't want a string C to be in the file. And you can see the rule is called Welcome to our training. The description is rule to find real friends. And with to find real friends, we want it to be kind, funny, and of course not imaginary, because we want real friends. So let's move on. With the YARA tool itself, and to scan a collection of files and find files that we are interested in, we have different parts inside the YARA structure. We have the YARA modules, we have the file set. Sorry, just give me a second. Sorry, I couldn't find the mute on my, just a second. Sorry guys, just recovered from a cold. So we have the file set, we have the rule. Basically the file set and the rule are going to be used with the YARA modules. And the YARA module scans the file set against the rule that is passed to it. And after that, we have the detected files that are found by YARA modules. These are the files that are matched with the condition that is introduced in the rule. And this is how we use it in a command line environment. It can be Windows command prompt, PowerShell, it can be Linux terminal, or even macOS terminal. You run YARA with -s option. -s is optional. It only helps to show where exactly in each file that specific string is found. You can remove it to have a shorter result and have a like better view of the detected files. Then we have the YARA rule file, which you can see here, rule_file.yar, and then the destination file. Or you can actually pass a directory to scan recursively and find every file that is matched with the rule inside that directory. With that one, you only need to use -r option to tell YARA to do recursive scan, like this one. Okay, now let's see what we can do with YARA. So we already explained that it is helpful to use YARA to identify and classify malwares. How we can do that? We can basically look inside inside the malware file, find some interesting and unique patterns inside the file, like a unique string. The string can be like a file name, or a registry key value. It can be even a domain, like a command and control server of a malware, or a domain that is used by the malware to download further modules of the attack. And then create a rule based on these patterns, and scan your malware collection with this pattern and find that specific type of malware. Then go ahead and look at another file that's not been detected with your YARA rule and try to do the same for that file. Basically, going forward, you can classify malwares and identify different malware types and malware families with YARA. Next one, find new malware samples based on family-specific features. So what this means is that you can make a little bit more generic rules that is not really strict, and can find malwares that have similarities with the specific file that you have, but not um, but it's not too strict to only match with this file. This way you can find new malware samples that are related to this malware. This is actually what we do most of the time. We find an attack, we analyze different malwares from that attack, and then after that we create YARA rules um, that can match new samples that are related to this attack, related to this malware family, and run these rules on our own collection or on VirusTotal. I'm sure most of you are familiar with VirusTotal, online multi-scanner, and wait for it to catch a new file that is related to the same attack. Next one, find new exploits on 0 days. How we can do that with the help of YARA? We can basically make rules based on the patterns in vulnerable vulnerable modules of the applications, or look for specific specific patterns that may lead to a buffer overflow, for example, or something else that might be related to an exploit code. For example, with other file formats, you can look for unusual um, objects, like unusual OLE objects in Office, Microsoft Office documents, to potentially find a new 0-day, a new exploit. Next, help speeding up incident response. Of course, when you do incident response, mm, uh, it can be really helpful if you find something that's suspicious. If you find a file that's suspicious, create a YARA rule and run the rule on the system, files on like every file on the disk of the system that you are doing the incident response for, and find other files related to that. Um, this can be like, for example, with the compilation timestamp of the file, you can find other files that are compiled around the same time and are present on that system. That might be other modules that the attackers have developed around the same time and used for the same attack. Also, if you have a pre-defined and prepared collection of YARA rules based on the old attacks or malwares that are related to the industry or um, geolocation of the victim, you can run that run that YARA rules on the system to find something that might be related to a known threat actor or a previous attack. Next one, increase your defenses by deploying custom rules inside your organization. Again, this can be another layer to your defense systems and security solutions. You can have on top of any security solution and firewall and everything that you have, you can have a collection of YARA rules that you have prepared previously, and you can run YARA scans regularly on the systems and networks, network servers inside your organization, and have a better defense. Also classification, identify file formats, archives, packed files, known threats. Again, as I said earlier, this classification is not only for malware families. You can basically do classification on any um, collection of files based on different different criteria. Like, for example, if you want to um, extract all the zip files from a collection of files without file extension, that might not be easy to see which file is a zip file, which file is not. But with a simple YARA rule, you can look inside the header of the files and extract and detect zip files, for example. Or you might be looking for Linux binaries in a collection of binaries from Linux platform, Windows platform, macOS platform. Um, that way you can use a YARA rule that looks for the files that are compiled for a specific platform and classify files based on the file formats. Also filter network traffic. Yeah, you can even do that. You can even look for specific patterns inside the packets that are sent and received on a network to find maybe packets that have been sent to a specific remote server, or packets that have been received on a specific ports, or even different patterns inside the files to, for example, find a known threat, like I don't know, like finding network packets that are related to um, WannaCry exploit that's still been seen after a few years. Or um, you can run a YARA rule on network traffic to find files that are sent to a specific domain. And last but not least, build your own private antivirus. As I explained earlier, you can have different rules from different known malwares, and you can have regular scans on your system to find malwares by yourself. I can see a question here. How many layers can YARA rule look within, like embedded files, within embedded files, something like project exploits? Okay, that's a very good question. When you use -R with YARA scanning to scan recursively, it looks inside all the like layers of directories. And with zip files, you have different options. You can extract zip files and then scan them, or you can use modules that are specifically prepared for scanning zip files, um, and use those with basic YARA engine to scan zip files. Did I answer your question, Sophia? Good. Let me actually explain this. Sometimes there are binaries inside binaries, and these binaries are changed in a way, like they can be encrypted, they can be packed, they can be embedded in another module in a way that might not be easy to look at the code or strings inside the embedded file. In these cases, we have to find a way to look for that files. For example, we have to see if there is a metadata of that file that can be used, because with simple YARA rules, it's not easy to look for a pattern that is inside a file that is encrypted inside and is present inside another file. Know what I mean? Okay, good. So some more information about YARA. Who uses YARA? Basically, every security company uses YARA. There are also several appliance vendors like FireEye that use YARA. VirusTotal uses YARA. ClamAV, lots of Fortune 500 companies use YARA, governmental agencies, also even spyware developers use YARA in their internal system. So it is very useful, and I hope you find it useful as well. Let me talk a little bit about Clara. That is a project that we have developed in Kaspersky. Clara is our internal system, which is hosted in the cloud. It has a web UI, and it allows researchers to test their YARA rules on several file sets. Like, for example, on the clean file set, that is a huge collection of benign and clean files from different vendors like Microsoft and other companies. Also, we have a specific malware collection that we can scan the rule against that collection to find files in that collection. We have other collections of files, for example, the script files or binary files for other operating systems other than Windows, I mean, and so on. What you can do with YARA, you can test the rules for false positives. So basically, as I said, if you create a rule for a malware family, you can use Clara to scan the huge clean collection that we have to make sure that there is no false positive with your rule and nothing is matched from that um, clean set of files with your rule. You can fine tune detections. You can find detections and then look at them. And if you find out that your rule was too generic and has collected more than what you were looking for, you can make the rule more strict, add a few more conditions, or a few more like unique or sometimes not so unique strings that can be used in a way that makes makes your rule unique. Also, you can use it for hunting for interesting samples. Of course, you can use different patterns inside your rule to find new samples that might not be detected and analyzed before. It's quite similar to VirusTotal Retro Hunt. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with VirusTotal Retro Hunt. Um, it's a service that VirusTotal offers. You create your YARA rule and run it on the collection of samples that VirusTotal has. You can choose between different options like the files that's been collected in the past month or past 6 months or past year and so on. Also, why I explained about Clara, because we have made Clara open source. You can actually download it and use it on your own system. You can run it, create your own collections of samples and files and use your YARA rules to scan these collections and yeah, and enjoy different options that Clara gives you. This is how it looks like in our environment. You can see like different rule names that were scanned against different collections. These are the collections. You have like Kaspersky collection, Kling collection. These are different rule names. These are the number of matched files, the status of the rule itself, if it's finished, if there was an error, if something was being found or not. Also, you can see the execution time and the owner, which is like the user that has scanned that file. So basically, it's with the UI, it's very easy to scan files. You don't need to have different collections on your own system and check every YARA rule against the collections that you have locally on your system. Okay, now let's move on and try to install YARA on our systems and see if we can start today with a few easy exercises and continue to more advanced exercises tomorrow. Guys, you can download. You can look at the description of how to install YARA from this URL, or you can extract the files that I sent you. Inside the tools, you have different files from different modules from YARA. You have two zip files for Windows 32-bit version and Windows 64-bit version, and you have the tar zip file for Linux. Also for Mac OS, it's quite easy. You can use the command on the slide here. So yeah, please go ahead and let me know if you have any issues. Please let us know in the chat if you have successfully installed YARA on your system. Let's take a few minutes. I'll go on mute. You can let me know in the chat if you have managed to install YARA. There's a file, there is this zip file, tar.gz, that you can use for Linux Linux system. If you have Linux, let me share with you how to do it. So basically, if you look at the slides here, you just extract the files and then use this command. You run this script inside the folder bootstrap.sh. And if you find problems with the dependencies, you can just run this command and then continue the compilation. Oh, there's no, okay. Let me see. Oh, you are right. Sorry. I'll share the link here. So for Windows, you only need to extract the files inside the zip file based on the version of your Windows. If it's a 32-bit, use the Win32. If it's a 64-bit, use the Win64. Just extract the files and put them in a directory next to the other samples, like the samples that we are going to use for the exercises. So here's the link to find the description of installation processes, the ones that I have put inside the slides. So I see some of you have already installed YARA on your systems. Can you guys let me know if there's anyone that could not download the zip file with the exercises and tools? Okay, so I guess that means everyone has managed to download the files and extract them. Okay, great. So let's move on to our first exercise. Write a simple rule. This is the most basic rule that you can write. It's a very simple rule. I'm going to show you the solution, because this is the first rule. I just want you to produce the same rule, create a text file, write the same rule inside the text file, save it, and then save it inside the directory of your files, and then scan the full directory with YARA, scan the rule on your full directory. So let's try this. This is a hello world rule with just one string inside, and the condition only asks for this string to be present in the file. So does anyone have any idea what this rule is going to catch? Which files? Any specific files? Okay, so I'll give you a few more minutes, like 5-10 minutes, to make sure that you have downloaded and installed YARA and write this this basic rule and try to scan your collection with this basic rule. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions. So I suggest you extract files from the zip file, like have the exercises and tools directory next to each other, and create another directory next to them called YARA, and then you can create YARA rules inside that directory, or you can actually create YARA rules outside of the directory, like right next to the exercises and tools. We want to have the whole collection of exercises and tools and YARA rules in our scan collection. So basically, you scan your YARA rule based on everything that you have. So for those of you who have Windows system, when you extract the files, these files, the YARA 32.exe or YARA 64.exe and the other files, these are console applications. They don't have a GUI. So if you just double click on them, it it is natural not to see anything and just see a small window opening and closing in like a few seconds. What you should do is to run the file through command prompt and see and then maybe give it a -H for the first time to see if you can see the help menu from the YARA, and then to scan your rule. Also, you need to run YARA in the command prompt, and then give it your YARA rule and then the address of a file or a directory with the -R option to scan. Okay, let me know if you've managed to write the YARA rule and scan it. Anyone has had any logs with this exercise? Any issues? Any anything that I need to explain or clear? Okay, let me show you how to do it. Stop sharing. Okay, so let's have a look at my my rule. So I extracted the zip file here. So I have the exercises. There's a collection here with 2 exercise files. I have the tools and I create this. I actually installed YARA as well. I can show you. I have a Linux machine. If you have Windows, you need to use CMD to run YARA. But here I have YARA. I can say YARA-H, and it gives me the help menu for YARA. You should be able to do the same on your system. So now let's look at this. Oops. Let's look at the YARA rule that I created, the hello world. As you can see here, we have the same rule that I showed on the screen. And we have rule hello world and just one string like this. And the condition is just string A. So this means that the string A should be in the file. Okay, so yeah, if you have YARA 32.exe or YARA 64.exe, you should use that file in the command prompt and then try to find the help options. So this is the rule. I'll give you a few more minutes so you can create the same file. Just create a text file, name it hello world .yara, and then put these strings inside the file to create the basic YARA rule. Anyone has created this basic YARA rule? Let us know in the chat. It's actually quite important because this is the basic thing. If we can create this rule, we can continue. I mean, if you want to continue with other exercises, it only makes sense to try the basic one and try to get your YARA scanning up and running, so you can continue with the exercises, rest of the exercises for today and rest of the sessions. Okay, great. So some of you have already created the file, the YARA rule. So let me show you how I can scan this rule against the files. So I use YARA-R for the recursive scanning. You need to, instead of the YARA that I put here, you need to give the path of the YARA 32.exe or YARA 64.exe file to the command prompt on your Windows machine. Or if it's a Linux or a Mac OS, you may do the same as me. And then I will pass the address of the YARA rule file. And then for the collection to scan, I want to use the current directory. So basically, I want the rule to be scanned against everything here: exercises, tools, the YARA file itself. So I use the current directory here. So what this means that the hello world rule was matched with one file, and that file is the hello world.yara file. So what that means is that because we were only looking for this string in the file, make Yara great again, and there was a file that had this string, and it was the Yara rule itself. This is the only file that's been matched. So basically, this rule matches itself and any other file if that file has the same string. But we don't have any other file that matches with this YARA rule in our collection. So yeah, let's try and see if you can find the same string. If you can't, there might be a problem. Let's see what the problem is. Was it clear? Okay, sounds good. I guess we can move on and look at other stuff if there is no question. I will stop sharing that window and share slides again. Okay, so any questions so far? Anything is not clear? Let me know before we move on. Okay, great. It's easy, right? It's just a rule that is a text file, and we only run it against the folder that we want to scan, and it matches the files with that string for us. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about some design tips. Design tips and recommendations. So think of YARA like a programming language, not an enhanced regular expression. So with this, I mean, it's good to indent the code. It's nice to put comments, like commenting if you use a specific string. It's good to put a comment to explain why this string is important, or if you use a hexadecimal string, like a string with hexadecimal values, it's nice to put a comment and explain what this is, where in the file this has been extracted from, or what is the ASCII value of this hexadecimal string. It helps to understand what this rule or how this rule was created when you want to have a look at it later, or for other people who want to check your rule. You can actually use comments with C or C++ syntax with double backslash or backslash and a star. Um, this is basically for rules that you are going to use like in a practical way, for like just test rules or rules that you are maybe going to create for our workshop. It's okay not to make comments, but if you have a rule that you may need to reuse it later, or other people might be looking at your rule later, it's good to have some comments. Also, as you see here, some rules might be published, and you may want to include some contact info like your name or email address, or sometimes even your PGP code if someone wants to contact you in a more like private email conversation. So we talked about different sections in the rule a little bit, but let's talk with more details here. First of all, we have the rule name, like this one. The rule name comes after the word rule. Rule is a keyword that has to be at the beginning of a rule, except if there are different modules that are used, which quite similar to other like programming languages. When you import or include a library or module, you put it at the beginning of the file. With YARA rules, it's also the same. If you want to use an external module of YARA, you need to include it at the beginning of the file, and then write the rule itself. So what is this format that we use for the rule name? Let's talk about the naming convention. This is basically completely optional how you name your rule, but there are some ways that's been common among researchers and among people for the past few years that YARA been used extensively. We tend to use a standard way to like a unified way of creating a name, to make sure that this short string that is the rule name gives an idea of what the rule is and what it is going to match um, in like a short glance. Like if someone only looks at your rule without even need to look at the description or running the rule against a malware collection or a collection of files, they can get an idea what the rule is. So we use the malware type, malware name, and malware family in the naming convention. So basically, let me go back here. As you see here, we have APT, which is the acronym for Advanced Persistent Threat. We use here to show that this rule is created to match some malwares from an APT attack. Then we have this CN here, which is used for the language of the APT actor, which in this case was for a Chinese-speaking threat actor. And if you don't know the language, you may use just ZZ, or you can remove this part. Then we have WinNTI here, which is the name of the threat actor, and we have stolen cert, which shows that this rule is going to detect some files that were being maybe digitally signed with a stolen certificate and is used by WinNTI threat actor, which is an APT actor, Chinese-speaking APT actor. So about the strings, we are going to talk about the strings in more details later. About the metadata, it makes sense to put the name of the author of the YARA rule. As I said, someone else might be looking at your rule and they may need to get in touch with you to know more about the files that were being analyzed by you, and or I mean, this is your rule. You want to have your name on it. Also, hash. It's very important to at least have like some hash value of maybe 1 or 2 files that are matched with this YARA rule. If you have them, it's like a reference that people can use to make more use of your YARA rule later. Date also is quite helpful in the metadata. It shows that when this YARA rule has been created, this way it's easy to find out if this rule was, if it's old, if it's outdated, if it's very new. Maybe sometimes get some understanding of the evolution of a threat actor based on the date of the YARA rules created by different researchers from different malware families used by that threat actor. And description, it's obvious from the name. It gives some short description of the YARA rule, like for example, this rule detects that malware family from specific threat actor. Also with conditions, it's very useful to have a header magic, like if you know you are looking for a specific file format, like a executable file for Windows operating system with the MZ magic value in the header, or ELF, or you have a Mac OS application, etc. It helps to speed up the scan process because the rule is not going to be scanned against every file format, only the file that is matched with the same header magic, and also improves the understanding of other people from your YARA rule when they look at the rule that you've written. Also file size, this is also important in many ways. First of all, if the file size is not specified, your YARA rule, your YARA scan may go get stuck in a huge file, like for example in a memory dump, or in a huge zip file, which you don't want to happen. If you know the exact file size, or like the raw file size, it's very helpful if you add it to the condition, so you limit um, the collection of files, like the specific files that are going to be scanned, and speed up the process. And of course, sometimes this file size is important in detecting the specific files that you want. Like for example, you want smaller scripts. You have some strings that are not very unique, but when you combine that condition, like condition of having that strings with a specific file size, you make it actually unique, and you make the YARA rule work. So a question, how many of these are mandatory and how many are optional parameters? So as we said earlier, the name of the rule, the structure of the name is completely optional. You can use whatever you want. It's a name. It's up to you how you choose it, but what I shared is how we use it and how many other researchers use to have a more unified way of using YARA rules. Also with the strings, you can have as much, you can have as many strings as you want. It all depends on what you are looking for in a file. The metadata section is optional, but you can have it in any way that you want. It helps to give more detail about more metadata about the rule, when it was created, why it was created, who has created the YARA rule, and so on. And conditions also, conditions is the only mandatory part. It is the it shows the actual logic of the YARA rule. You can have lots of strings in the strings, but YARA engine can only make sense of these strings based on the condition that you have there. Like for example, you want only 5 of the string sets to be matched, or you want all of them to be inside the file, or you want some of them to be present, some of them not to be present in the file, and so on. So next question, only condition is mandatory according to Malwarebytes? Yes, exactly. Only condition is mandatory. But as I said previously as well, in majority of the cases, the rule doesn't make sense without a string. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you can only have a condition. Like for example, you use some modules, like for example, you use PE module in your YARA rule, and in condition, you only ask the file to be matched with the condition of having section names like this, or having an import function named this, without any strings. But most of the times, these are the strings that are the unique parts of the malware or a sample that we are looking after. So can there be multiple rules in a file? If so, is that a common practice? It is very common to have multiple rules in a file. It makes it easier to scan a collection of files to look for a few different rules. Like, for example, you have a big collection of files and you have 2 or 3 or 5 different malware types. You create rules for each of them. You put all the rules in one file and scan the whole collection with that file. And then you can easily find out which files are not detected with any rule. Or you can have a look at which file was detected with which rule. Sometimes, like, there are 2 rules that are matched with one specific file and so on. So it is common, yeah. When doing a recursion in a directory, do we have to pass file sizes for all? So basically, file size is a condition that you put inside the YARA rule. It's not an option that you give YARA when you are scanning the directory. So this file size is the file size of each individual file that is going to be scanned with the rule. So if you have a big collection, if you have a directory with lots of files, every single file is scanned with YARA engine individually. And this file size is the file size of that file, not the directory itself. Okay, great. Any more questions? Should we move on? Okay, so already explained this, but you can see it better in this slide. This is the malware type, which can be APT, can be exploit, crimeware, which is usually used for like cybercrime activities. It can be clean or anything else that you want. This is the country or language, especially for APTs. This is the threat actor name, as I explained earlier, and this is the malware name or specific family for that threat actor. Also, an example of the meta section, as you see here. This rule is very descriptive. It's created by Costin, my colleague, who is the director of the Global Research and Analysis team at Kaspersky. You can see that we have the full name, the email address, and the company name. Also, there's a type that shows it was for an APT attack, the file type, which is Win32 executable. You can see there's a date, exact date, the version of the YARA rule. There's a reference, which is a reference to a blog post that was written based on the analysis and investigation of this specific malware family. And you can also see that there's MD5 hash here for reference for other people who want to have a look at the rule. They can quickly grab this file from VirusTotal or from any other collection that they have and check the rule against it, and also look further in the file to find maybe another pattern that they think might be interesting to find further modules. So these are the recommended keywords for metadata: author, date, version, reference, description, and hash, or MD5 or SHA-1 or SHA-256. But you can just use hash, the keyword hash, and put any sort of hash value that you want. It's not, I mean, they are not going to be confused with each other because of different lengths that different hash values have. It's also useful to have a last modified timestamp because sometimes you revise a YARA rule after a while and change it, or add something, then you put a last modified timestamp. Also a copyright or TLP, which shows that if this rule can be distributed to your organization, or it is only shared with you and you should not share it with anyone, even your colleagues and so on. Also YARA versions, which would show the minimum YARA version required for the rule. There are some rules that are that have some specific that use some specific features of YARA engine that might not be present in like older versions of YARA. So in case there is such thing in your YARA rule, it's good to put the YARA version that is required to scan the YARA rule. So another question, just to clarify, the hash in the metadata is the hash of the YARA rule. Very good question. The hash in the metadata is not the hash of the YARA rule, but it's the hash of one file that is matched with this YARA rule. So basically you put this hash, like for example, you have a malware sample, you look at the malware sample, you create a YARA rule to match this malware or any other similar malware, and you put the hash of this specific malware in your YARA rule. So how it helps other people, if for example, I look at the rule that you have created, I see the strings, I see the conditions, but if I want to quickly find a file that is matched with your YARA rule, or understand why you have created this specific rule, which malware family you were looking at when you created this YARA rule, I can use the hash that you have put inside your YARA rule to download that malware sample from a collection and look at the malware. So it's not the hash of the YARA rule, it's the hash of the malware or file, any file that is matched with the YARA rule. And basically it's not easy to find hash of a file before creating the file itself. Like it's not easy to find the hash of your YARA rule and put the hash inside your YARA rule, because the file is going to change when you edit it. Any more questions? Should we move on? So this is for just for your reference. If you want to have a look at more details about the metadata recommendations from other vendors that work with YARA rules, this is from the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity, the YARA specification. You can visit their website and see what they recommend to have as metadata inside a YARA rule, to make it easier for other people to use your YARA rule and understand your YARA rule. I will share the link in the chat. Okay, so about the hashes, putting a hash in metadata helps others find the sample quickly, or it helps you find the sample on which the rule was generated later, as I already explained. Also, as I said, it's okay to use MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, or even multiple hashes of the same file, or multiple hashes for like multiple files. For example, use MD5 1 for like MD5 value of one sample, MD5 2 for MD5 value of another sample, and so on. But because different hash values can be separated from each other based on the length of the hash value, um, it's just easier to use hash, like hash keyword multiple times. Use hash like 2 times and put SHA-1 values of 2 different samples or MD5 values of 2 different samples. Okay, so some rules about the YARA rule and writing YARA rules, being part of the group and club that writes YARA rules. So basically, there are no rules for rules. You can define a rule based on your understanding of the malware sample or your understanding of the file, whatever file it is. It can be a malware sample, it can be a clean file, it can be some packet capture files, whatever it is, it's up to you how to create the rule to detect it. Also, there is no wrong or right rule. Any rule that works, any rule that catches the files that are similar to your file, that's good enough. I mean, YARA rule is not an antivirus detection. It doesn't need to be that specific. If it works, if it finds the file that you are after, it's good enough. But at the same time, it makes sense not to have it too generic to get false positives, and not to have it too strict to miss some of the files that can be catched with the YARA rule. So here we only show how we do it. You are free to choose your way. For the exercises, I'll show you my solution. You can choose to do it however you like. If it matches the files that we want, it's also good. So we have some more questions in the chat. So as mentioned previously, only the condition part in the YARA rule is mandatory. Okay. So this hash is basically the hash and everything in the metadata is basically just a reference for someone else or yourself who want to have a look at the rule later. So hash is there for easier indexing than integrity protection. So basically, as I said, this hash is just a metadata. It has no specific functionality. You can have it, or you can choose not to add hash to your YARA. Sometimes you don't even have it, like you know some for example some domain name, and you want to find files that have this domain inside. You have no specific file, you have no specific reference to add to the metadata. But in case you have a file, it's a good practice to put the hash value in the metadata. Previously only the condition part. So yeah. Okay, great. So we are actually almost done for today. We have some exercises for tomorrow. I can show you one of the exercises. We can start today and continue tomorrow. So we still have, I guess, 15 minutes. We can start with the next exercise. and then continue tomorrow. So exercise 1 in for today, we want to write a YARA rule that finds other YARA rules. So think about it and try to write a YARA rule that finds other YARA rules. And if you have any questions, let me know. So if you have any questions, let me know. If the exercise is not clear, let me know. I can explain what I mean by a YARA rule that finds other YARA rules. If it's clear, try to write a rule. You can use the previous rule that we have created to make it easier. You can just copy the file and then edit it until you get more hands-on and get used to writing YARA rules. It's easier to copy and edit a previous YARA rule. So just some hints for this exercise. So basically, when we want to write a YARA rule to find specific files, we look for patterns that are present in that files, like strings. For example, in a YARA rule, we are trying to detect YARA rules, right? In a YARA rule, we have a specific strings that we have learned in our session today. You you can use that specific strings to find a YARA rule. So very good. Some of you have some ideas how to write it. So one idea is to search for YARA extension. That's a good point, but unfortunately with YARA you cannot look for file extensions. File extensions are basically not part of the file content. The only thing that is accessible to YARA engine is the content of the file, which doesn't change with removing the extension, changing the extension, changing file name. The content of the file body is still the same, and that's what is available to YARA engine to scan. So YARA extension is not a relevant option for our exercise. Another idea here, I will look for strings that contain rule and condition and strings. That's a good idea. We can try this. We know that every YARA rule needs to have the rule keyword at the beginning and has some strings and conditions. Of course, the strings are not mandatory. We only have conditions that is mandatory in the file. But again, as I said previously, most of the YARA rules that you see is written and used by people. They have at least a few strings. So why not? Let's try with these 3 strings and see if you can find your YARA rule and the previous YARA rule. You at least would have 2 YARA rules when you create this one. You have the first YARA rule and the current YARA rule. So your rule needs to match these 2 YARA rule files. Let me know if that works. Okay, has anyone managed to detect the two YARA rules with this rule? Okay, great. So because we are running out of time, let me show you the rule and how it can catch the two YARA rules that we have already created. So very good point. One of you has shared. I use rule and condition. It seems to work. It's very good. Of course, if you only use rule or if you only use condition, it would also work. But this is what I mean by too generic. You want to make your rule not too generic, not too strict. So if there is any other condition or any other string that can be added without making this rule too strict, it's good to add it. It helps to remove some false positives. Even if we could define that we want a string rule to be at the beginning of the file, and then after that we want to find strings, and at the end we want to find a condition, that would be really helpful, which is very possible, but we haven't learned how to do it yet. We will see how to check the position of the strings and define conditions based on the position of the strings tomorrow. So let me share my work window again. So here I have created this YARA rule and rule for YARA rules. You can see here that I had put these three strings rule with a space, which is mandatory after the rule keyword before the name of the rule. We have a strings colon, we have conditions colon, and here is something that is quite helpful. You can either use A1 and A2 and A3, or if your condition contains every string that you have defined in the string section, you can use the phrase all of them. Or even you can sometimes use any of them. Any of them means like any of the strings. Or you can use 3 of them or 4 of them, 2 of them. These are all possible values that you can use in the condition. Here I use all of them. So let's see if this YARA rule can detect itself and the previous YARA rule that we have created. As you see here, the YARA rule detects the YARA rules.yara and also the hello world.yara. So someone has asked, can I use A and B and C for the condition? Yes, you can use A and B and C. You can use any combination of these. Like it's a, as I said, it's a logical expression. You can define it however it suits the condition you are looking for. Let me actually, because we have 1 or 2 more minutes, let me actually change this to show you how you can in fact use A1 and A2 or any name that you have given them, like A, B, and C. A3, and it can still work the same You can also change it and have 3 of them. It still works the same. And of course, you can make it less strict and say, for example, you can say 1 of them. It would still work the same. So let me change it back to all of them and try again. Okay, so that was basically it for today. Now let's see if there is any questions left. If not, we will continue tomorrow with more specific conditions and learning some options and more like useful keywords for strings and try other exercises. I hope it was useful what we did today. If you have any questions, if you have time, you can answer some questions. If not, we can meet again tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Noshin. Anyone have any questions? No, I think you're interesting. Thank you now. All right. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Thank you everyone for attending. Thanks Noshin for
Emil, one question.
yeah. Rahim,
Yeah, for tomorrow, will we still need to do another confirmation again? That's what we did today.
No need, no need. Today, pretty much whoever is attending today will be attending the next.
Also,
session.
the link will be the same lah.
Yes, exactly the same. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Should be, if you accepted the calendar invite, it should have populated throughout the 3 days. Okay. So tomorrow morning, what we're gonna do is before we start, we're gonna do a group photo as well. So, you know, dress up a little bit better, style your hair. Yeah, it's a little tradition that we do. All right. If not, thank you very much, Noshi. Look forward to your session again tomorrow. Cheers. Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.